Okay, it looks very much like we are.
Good.
Okay.
Okay, I see I am the co-host now.
Welcome everyone to the second day of the Unizin Summit. And it is our first keynote that focuses on self-care and mental wellness. And it seems really appropriate with everyone involved in higher ed and instructional technology and teaching in general to focus on self-care and mental wellness on this second summit. Before we do that, I want to take just a little bit of a moment and thank some folks. I want to thank Mariah Aguilar, Sarah Hofstetter, Glenda Genschner for all the behind the scenes work, all the critically important stuff that they do, which includes keeping me sane by nudging, pushing, cajoling, and organizing everything that makes this summit possible. I also want to thank every one of our sponsors, Name Coach, Kaltura, Desire to Learn, Instructure, Turnitin, Examity, and Top Hat that make it possible for us to offer this summit completely for free, no cost to anyone attending. In particular, I want to thank our Builder Plus sponsor, Desire to Learn, who is sponsoring this particular keynote. Desire to Learn is a very strong supporter of Unizin's mission to support higher education institutions as they grapple with all the challenges and the opportunities presented by digital transformation. Desire to Learn was an early pioneer in unlocking digital tools and is excited to partner with Unizin and work with member institutions to support their mission, their critical initiatives, and to focus on teaching and learning, data analytics, and research. Desire to Learn is also a strong believer in choice and would like to thank Unizin for their support and enthusiasm in providing member institutions with options when it comes to adopting new technologies. This year's keynote is Kristin Summers. Kristin is presenting this keynote, and as some of you will recall, in memory of John Johnston, who we lost in October of 2020. John led Unizin, many of the teaching and learning communities with infectious enthusiasm, with deep subject matter expertise, and with persuasive influence. He was an amazing academic technologist who made a number of significant and lasting contributions to the Unizin community, particularly in the area of learning analytics. He was the lead on the University of Michigan's My Learning Analytics app that 7 of our campuses now use. He was incredibly approachable and always engaging and kept everyone involved. And we want to honor his memory today by offering this particular keynote. Kristin Summers is the CEO of the Mindful Self-Care Education and Empowerment Company, known as Back to Self-Care, and the creator of the 5-pillar self-care method. She's also a 6-time award-winning journalist, app creator, and entrepreneur. We welcome your questions. Please put them in the Q&A, and we'll be happy to bring them up as time allows at the end. And with that said, I want to give you, Kristin, and give you an opportunity to take care of yourself a little bit here. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that introduction. Thank you guys for your time. And also thank you for your dedication to your craft as academics. As someone who just has a bachelor's degree in journalism, I cannot fathom what you guys have went through during the pandemic. But I thank you for your hard work. Thank you for your dedication and your passion for teaching and expanding minds. And with that, I am going to share my screen and pull up a presentation that I put together to go over mindful self-care, my research, my program, and hopefully shift your mind a little bit about how you think about self-care. So here we go. Now, research time and time again says we have more than 6,000 thoughts a day. And unfortunately, we do have a negative bias. Though I promise that's really the only negative thing I'm going to say, but I'm going to spin it, I promise. 80% of that is negative, right? 95 of our thoughts are repetitive. I like to think about thoughts as boulders and barbed wire, okay? And what we're going to talk about today is how using mindful self-care, asking ourselves the right questions to shift our mind so we can take away the power, because there is no power to those negative thoughts that we have about ourselves. Let's be honest, we all have them, whether they're neutral, whether they're straight up negative, we all have them. And we can't get rid of them, the way our brains are wired. But we can do some things to lessen them, which is why I talk about the boulders and barbed wire. So boulders and barbed wire, when I think about boulders, right, and you have one thought, remember it said 95% repetitive, they're building on top of each other. Those thoughts, eventually, are building a wall, right? So then when you start doing work on yourself, let's say it's a particular negative thought you've had about yourself, whether that is you can't figure out something, you can't do something, maybe you used to be able to do something, like work in the garden, but you can't do it now for health reasons, for example. Those thoughts start to kind of build a wall. And it can seem daunting of like, okay, I know I need to take care of myself better. I know I need to not necessarily think positive, but almost think neutral. This isn't a toxic positivity type of presentation by any means. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. Because like I said, we all have moments where we don't feel the greatest. That is part of being human. But I would like to, the goal that I like to help people get to and that I strive for are barbed wire thoughts. So essentially, barbed wire fence, the little spurs, the little pointy things on the fence. I want to separate those, make sure that my barbed wire fence in my mind has less of those, because I'm going to occasionally go through there, thoughts about myself throughout the day, because we all get on autopilot, and then it might get snagged by that barbed wire, right, by that spur. But it's making sure that we have the right tools and techniques to say, oh, okay, the negative thought kind of pricked me for a second, and then going about our day. So when I'm working with people and whenever myself, I'm thinking, am I building a wall, boulders, building a big wall, or am I having my thoughts be more like barbed wire? Now, I mentioned autopilot. We all end up on autopilot at some time. We don't really think about, we just get up, get dressed, coffee, take care of the kids, maybe look at some emails, and then we go about our day. Look at our research, put together our courses for our students, whatever you guys are doing. The point is that whatever your daily routine is, while routine is important, we can get stuck on autopilot. And so are we just going through the motions? And the truth is that we are, a lot of us are. And so a lot of what I talk about is mindful self-care, and that is being mindful of how you speak to yourself. And one of the biggest questions is, do I even know what I like anymore? Because when it comes to self-care, it really is about what you like, about what you're into, you specifically, because everyone is different. Similar interests, but guess what? Every single mind is different. Every single approach is different. While similar, everyone is different in some way. So when it comes to self-care, it really is about self-discovery. And that's a lot of what my research kind of came to be, was, do I even like myself anymore? Do I even know what I like anymore? Or do I even know what I don't like? Because a lot of times we think about what we don't like, but then we kind of realize we're going through the motions and that we're doing things maybe out of habit, out of obligation. We're doing things out of expectation, and they're not coming from a genuine place. And when it's not from a genuine place, that's where resentment comes in. And we have those unmet expectations, the subconscious expectations, which is from frustration, by the way. And so essentially, a lot of what self-care is knowing yourself. And one thing about our minds, there's whole halves and partial truths, right? We tell ourselves something and we think it's true. If I think it, it must be true. And people believe feeling over fact. And so a lot of what self-care is acknowledging the emotions, realizing that they are just emotions like waves, they come and they go, but being solid in the facts about who you are, what you deserve, and what self-care looks like to you and what feels good to you. Because what feels good to you is not going to feel good to someone else. And mainstream self-care, which I've studied the last couple of years, is very much just commercialized of put on a face mask, buy a new shirt, buy a car, buy yourself something. It's very material based, which is fantastic marketing for the health and beauty, right, industry. And goes beyond that when it comes to, like I said, cars, when it comes to clothing. They've really capitalized on that. But when we take a step back, when we are intentional with our purchases, we are intentional with our choices, because we know when we do certain things that feels good to us and that we deserve to feel good, that's when things change. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about how I broke my own autopilot. So essentially, background is journalism, marriage, kids. I was very content with what I had. And then I went through some things. I went through a little bit of a severe postpartum depression, anxiety, and I say little when it really wasn't. And what I started to notice when I started to take care of myself more, I started realizing that I didn't want to get lost in my career as much as I loved my career. And I still love writing very much. I didn't want to get lost in my children because I didn't want to have empty nest syndrome whenever my children leave the house. So it's like, who is Kristin now? Who is Kristin before, who she is now, and who does she want to be? So that's when I started researching, like I mentioned, the mainstream self-care, which is very much, like I said, just honestly put a Band-Aid over it. It focuses on the physical self-care because that is the easiest to sell. And real self-care, it is ownership of your issues. It is tough love, it is compassion, it is confidence, and it is courage to move forward. And I define self-care as consistent acts of self-love. So to know what those consistent acts of self-love are, you need to know what you actually like. And maybe, like I said, break that autopilot of why you put on that color today, why you put on that shirt, why you decide to wear those shoes, listen to that music, why do you like your coffee that way? And you can just say, I've always liked it that way. Well, that's okay, but maybe dig a little bit more. When did you start liking that coffee that way? Are you open to all kinds of coffee? Are you open to all kinds of movies or books? We don't always have to do things the way we've always done them. And we can, if they feel good, if we know that that is true to us. But a lot of us just do things because out of expectation, or we're trying to just, quote unquote, oh, move on. Don't spend any energy on it, right? There's bigger things, and there are, but you are your greatest investment. And so whenever you are with other people and you're kind of going through the motions and kind of just going along with whatever they're doing, over time, if you keep doing that, you can lose yourself. And you don't know how to take care of yourself. You don't know what feels good to you anymore. You don't know what joy feels like from within. You start to feel that you are just kind of doing things just to do things. So a lot of what I do when I work with people is to help break that and get people to really know themselves again, which is a process. But you know what? I like to use the ripple analogy. You have a boulder. If this boulder drops into the water, immediate splash, big, lots of ripples, then it disappears. The water goes back to being still. But when we start working on ourselves as essentially like pebbles, we're removing that boulders. If we've got a wall of boulders of thoughts about ourselves that we know are not the greatest and we know we need to do better. When we start working on removing those, little pebbles hit the water. Then you have ripple after ripple after ripple, and it has a longer effect. And that's where you see progress. And you guys know, as I do, that when it comes to when you're working on something, on a project, when you are maybe trying to finish that degree, right? When you're putting in that consistent work, that's what makes a difference. Society likes to focus on the big wins, right? But you know, I know, it's those small wins behind the scenes that makes things happen. The same thing goes when you work on your self-care, when you work on that self-talk, that self-love on the inside. It's that consistent work behind the scenes. So some of the common narratives. So whenever I started to do some research into self-care and I started to see all this marketing, and this was 5-6 years ago, and since the pandemic, it's been much more prominent on mainstream news, streaming services, magazines, it's everywhere. I just got a package yesterday that said something about self-care superstars. And it's for something that I wouldn't really deem as self-care. I just deem it as just something hygiene and essential, which is part of self-care. But again, it's much more than just brushing your teeth, folks, and taking a shower and working out. And I will go into that here shortly. But as I started to talk to people, I started to interview people, Facebook groups, in person, phone calls with people, and I would just ask them. I would use my journalistic skills. I decided, I have this mind that's essentially a researcher, and my job is to take information and regurgitate it in a way that's at the 6th grade reading level. Used to be 8th grade. And so I decided to use that to start asking people, why don't they take care of themselves better, or what they think self-care is and how they take care of themselves. And the number one thing was that they're selfish. Oh, that's selfish. And I know that there is some generational draft, so to speak. There's some overlay there, right, from previous generations. So I know where that comes from is because of our parents and our grandparents. If I talk to my grandparents now about what I do, they have no idea, and that's okay. Different generation, different time, different environment, the economics, everything was different, right? The number one thing I hear from people still today is that it's selfish. I hear that it takes too much time because mainstream, now that it's more popular, has told us that it's just a day at the spa, or it's just a day at the gym, or a day lounging around. Now that is important. Rest is important. In fact, I like to talk about a rest, revive, and thrive kind of circle when it comes to my self-care. But a lot of people think it has to be this big, elaborate routine, when essentially you're doing things for yourself every single day. You're on autopilot, you just don't know it. You think about self-care in a very different way, the way that mainstream self-care is, right? And self-care essentially is what feels good to you and consistent acts of self-love. So when you make that coffee, when you listen to that music, when you listen to that podcast, right? When you go for that walk, gardening, spending time with your family, times with your pets, that's self-care. And if we could shift our mind that when we're in those acts to say, you know what, I made my coffee this way because I like it this way, it feels good to me, and it wakes me up and gets me through the day. It's little mindset shifts like that of awareness. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you to add stuff to your self-care. I'm going to tell you to kind of just break that autopilot of what you think self-care is and realize that maybe you're doing more for yourself than what you realize. And then you can add to that, right? Like, okay, well, I'm doing this, or I'm doing this habit. I don't like the fact that I veg out on the TV for 3 hours when I need to be reading, or I need to be just conversing with my neighbors or my partner, for example. So it comes to that awareness of realizing not just what we want, but what we don't want, and then how we can make little shifts. But first is realizing that we're already doing things for ourselves and giving ourselves some credit, giving ourselves a break, right? Giving that self-talk. And I know that self-love talk for people can be difficult. I understand. I'm not saying you have to stand in front of the mirror and say a bunch of affirmations. If that's what feels good to you, then do it. For me, it's little cues throughout the day that I see in my house and in my car that remind me. Excuse me. So it really just depends on what works for you, but it's taking the time to know yourself to know what works. So people say it's too much time. You have to have a certain status. It's for those that are millionaires. It's for those that make so many figures, so much. Or it's just for women. I hear that very common, actually. I have some one-on-one male clients, which is fantastic that I have men coming wanting to work with me one-on-one. but they will say, all I hear about is self-care is for women. That's all I hear. I'm glad that that narrative is breaking and there's more people, more men aware they deserve to take care of themselves. And it's more than just going to the gym, but it's very common to hear that it's just for women. And then they have to earn it. This one too is the hustle culture, the whole grind, grind, grind. As an entrepreneur, I see this every day on top of the toxic positivity is that I have to grind myself to the bone in order to earn self-care. I have to push through, no sleep for 5 days, and then I get a day off. Again, going back to the whole boulder and pebbles analogy, I think it actually might work a little bit better, and it does for me, if maybe I sprinkle in some things that I know that feel good to me, and I'm also aware that I'm making choices throughout the day that feel good to me, and I'm assuring myself when I make those choices about why I'm making those, because I know myself. And I know that I'm also open to learning new things, but I know essentially my core foundation of what I like and what I don't like, what my boundaries are with people when it comes to certain discussions, and what's open to talk about, because I've taken that time. But a lot of people feel like they have to work themselves to the absolute bone and be burnout, which honestly, I think really adds to this whole hustle and grind, adds to the whole great retention that we've been going through. I've been talking to several businesses about that, about keeping employees, and people feel burnt out. And it's because they are just told day in, day out, social media, whatever they choose to get the information, because we get so much information pushed at us every single day, that they just have to go, go, go all the time. And really, I have found for me, I know a lot of people that I've talked to have felt this way, that when they take a little time for themselves and they're more aware of what they're doing for themselves, they're able to show up and give that speech. They're able to show up and have that meeting with their colleagues, and they feel better. They feel more prepared of what they're saying and what they're doing. It's because they've taken the time to actually nurture themselves. So this essentially, I'm doing this research, I'm talking to people, seeing the common narratives, and then I start thinking about self-care and how to break it down, because it is way more than physical. Again, that's mainstream, so they figure on because that's what they can sell. So I decided to break it down into 5 pillars. Essentially, when these 5 pillars are up, you have a more solid foundation for overall well-being. And I have been working on this particular method for 4 or 5 years. I've been teaching it to individuals and groups and businesses for about 18 months now, this essentially. And so the 5 pillars are broken down to this: emotional, mental, connection, practical, and physical. And I'm going to talk about 2 of them today. I feel like most of them, you guys are all very intelligent people. You guys have pretty good understanding of what this is. Physical, like I said, is what people see every day, which is still important. It's still important, but there's so much more to it. And what's great about this 5 pillars, or really just self-care in general, when you start taking care of yourself in one area, it tends to flow into other areas of your life. And then it kind of charges you to do more. It charges you to be more aware of maybe the words that you're using. For instance, like I mentioned, the whole, I don't know how to solve this problem. I don't know how to do this. I can't. And switching that, for instance, to just say, I don't have it figured out yet. I don't know how to solve this problem yet. Or this is a conflict I have not found the resolution to yet. Adding something like that, very simple. And that's essentially just shifting the mind, is essentially life-changing, because it's building your confidence and assuring that your mind that you're going to figure it out and you're getting there. And honestly, I think it gets you closer to the solution that what you're actually looking for. So there's a physical aspect, medication, moving your body, fueling it, rest and sleep. Practical, that's essentially just adulting one-on-one. We know that studies have shown that you want to look at someone's mental well-being, look at their home, look at certain spaces. Now, we all get cluttered at times, but if you were to see your house consistently cluttered and it feels overwhelming, that's just a sign that there's just a lot going on. You're busy in other things that you need to maybe take some time, set a timer for 5 minutes and challenge yourself to clean up a particular space. I'm the type of person who likes to challenge myself. So I will do that with the dishes. I'm getting up, I've got to get the kids to school. before I have my, my morning meeting with my team, whatever it may be, I set a timer. I know I can do the dishes, unload and reload in under 5 minutes, which is a huge accomplishment to me, trust me. Same thing with laundry. But I've made the choices to do those things because I know that's practical self-care, be clean clothes, clean food, plates, whatever, that's important. Paying the bills, obviously keeping the lights on, that's important. I will bucket out that time to do so. The Spanx creator, Sarah Blakely, talks about bucketing our time, and I absolutely love doing that. I learned that from her masterclass, actually, because it allows me to shift gears and to focus on just that one thing I need to do, whether that's my emails. Okay, I'm going to bucket out this time for my emails for an hour or 30 minutes, and then I'm going to go put my phone away, put my laptop away, and I'm going to go read, or I'm going to go walk or garden, or I'm going to go to the local coffee shop. I'm just going to go out and engage with people. I like to walk around different downtowns and different cities that I visit and just talk to people and connection, because the pandemic really took that away from us. And now that we have the opportunity to get back into that, it takes a little bit of practice to do the in-person, but it's so important because we are creatures, us humans, we're made for connection of various kinds, which is why I have connection self-care as well. That's connecting with nature, which studies show again and again the benefits of just being outside in nature, even if it's just in your own backyard. Just take some deep breaths and just how that can recharge us. Again, self-care doesn't have to be this thing where it's like I have to take this amounts of time. I have to take 3 hours a day. Little things. Can I step outside and take a deep breath outside, enjoy some fresh air, and then go back to my office, right? Can I go walk around the block and then come back? So little things like that we can do. And actually, studies show when we take a little bit of breaks in between certain tasks, actually helps us recenter, kind of come back to neutral, so to speak, and gets us focused on the next task. So if, like for me, I'm not going to do emails for 30 minutes, and then I'm going to turn around and then I'm going to go do something that puts me in mom mode, so to speak. I'm going to give myself a few minutes to okay, I've accomplished this goal. I've got my emails done. I've got my meeting set up for the day. I've talked to my team, and now I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to listen to some music. I'm going to just go get myself a drink of water, just enjoy a nice glass of water. And then I'm going to shift and okay, now I'm going into mom mode, whatever it may be, right? That connection is our relationships, how we show up in our relationships. And that's very important because a lot of times people take things way too personal, and it's easy to do so. When you work close with someone and then you send them a quick email and they respond back, okay, or K, you're thinking, okay, what did I do to them? You didn't do anything. And if you think that you honestly maybe did something, ask them. But 9 times out of 10, they are focused on their own projects, their own work, whatever it may be, right? Their life. And so they're just trying to respond to acknowledge, okay, I saw your email. Yes, I'll get back to you later with it. Okay. But we can take that so personal at times, which is understandable. But when we start to realize that people respond based on how they are feeling about themselves, it takes kind of the pressure off. When someone cuts you off in traffic, or maybe someone in customer service is a little curt, is a little short with you, I like to remind myself they're obviously having a bad day. I'm just going to do my best to help them through whatever we're working through together, right? Whatever it may be, and then move on with my day. But I'm not going to let something like that or traffic ruin my day. If I feel myself irritated, I will shift, do something for myself. And then I realize they clearly were having a bad day, because most people don't realize that they're doing that and they're projecting how they're feeling about themselves onto other people. But when you can realize that, then you can stop taking things so personal, and then you don't spend time, energy on something that's not even there, right? And then with connections, also nostalgia, connecting with that part of ourselves that maybe we don't always get to, whether that's something that's childlike when we were teenagers, when we were in our 20s, whatever it may be. Connecting with those moments and really soaking those up are actually really good for our mental health as well. So I'm going to be talking about mainly the emotional and mental aspects, because this is the stuff that I love to talk about the most. to be honest. Now, mental self-care, you guys know the mind is amazing, right? Your mind is a muscle. Neuroplasticity, right? We are lifelong learners. We are avid learners, right? When we get into that mind space, it needs to be flexed. You definitely need something that does not make you money that you enjoy doing for yourself. And I encourage you, if you don't know, explore. Ask yourself why. Think about things you used to do. Again, my company's called Back to Self-Care. We don't believe in the whole finding yourself again. It's about getting back to who you were before the world told you to be someone else. So go back. If you don't know what you like or what you're into, maybe you used to play board games as a kid. Play a board game. And some of you might be laughing at that. But honestly, when you can tap into that, something that you were used to be into or you know you're into now, and you dedicate some time to it, you feel more energized and ready to go do your work, to pursue things in your career, to work with people one-on-one, because you've taken that time to recharge. You're recharging yourself. You're a phone. You're a phone that needs to be charged every single day. And that's okay. But a lot of times we don't know what recharges us, right? So if you don't know, ask yourself why. Why does this feel good? For example, for me, I started to get into photography. So I bought this nice camera, and then I started taking photos, and then I thought, you know what, maybe I should start painting these. No experience in oil painting, doesn't matter. I allowed myself to cultivate that curiosity and started painting. Now, my paintings are in my wall. They will not be sold. My kids are very sweet. They want them on Facebook. That's clearly for me, and I will never sell them. But I taught myself. Now, I could be mad at myself saying that I spent all this money on this camera, but now I don't even do that. Now I buy art supplies. But if I hadn't started with that photography, it wouldn't let me to oil painting, which honestly kind of inspires my personal writing and the books that I'm working on. It also helps me kind of, again, reset when I need to work with a client. I need to work with someone one-on-one, and it's a little more intense, right? So it's all about the self-discovery of what feels good to you and who are you? And if you don't know who I am, that is okay. I'm not saying that you have to know exactly who you are, because I actually want you to remove those labels and say, I like this at the moment. I'm into photography at the moment. Because when you add at the moment, it's basically telling your mind that, okay, right now I'm into it, but it doesn't have to define me. I am very fluid, and we're always growing and changing and evolving, and we should be. Even if it's just little things, from we liked lattes and now we like mochas. It doesn't matter. If it matters to you, that is the key. It doesn't really matter what anyone else thinks. And it really is about that self-discovery, because you deserve to know yourself. You deserve to feel good. You deserve to know what feels good to you to recharge yourself. Because while compliments are nice from other people, it's not going to fill your cup. It's not going to charge your phone. It's not going to charge you. It's going to feel good in the moment, and then it's going to go away. And that's your responsibility. You're responsible for your own happiness, your own self-care, and how you show up in your relationships, with work, and professional and personal. But we remove those labels and we say we're in this at the moment. We're doing this at the moment. It allows our mind to expand, because we are limitless in many ways. Now, granted, there are some things that might restrict us, might be our physical health, it might be different things. But with a mindset shift, you actually have a lot more going on for you than what you realize. And so the emotional self-care is the most important part, because this deals with the mind. This was processing what's going on in your life, in the past, in the current moment, and finding out good techniques that are going to help you process those difficult emotions. Actually, if you choose to identify one of they say 28 emotions, it depends on who you talk to, or there's the core 8. The point is, we have a lot of emotions as humans. We just do. And so, but when we can learn how to regulate those, right, in a healthy way, we're able to move through things faster. We're able to handle things in a way that feels good. And then we feel good about ourselves, and we're able to move on with whatever we need to be working on, right? So these are some self-care techniques for emotional self-care that I tell everyone to do. I'm not a therapist. I do not pretend to be a therapist whatsoever. So I tell people that want to work with me or talk about trauma to go to therapy, okay? And while the BetterHelp, the apps are fine, I'm very much about in person. Put down the phone. Put down the phone, go see them in person, or do a phone call. My biggest thing, as my background's in writing, is journaling. And there's a lot of different journal techniques. I'm going to go through a few here. So brain dumping is essentially something that's great when you're overwhelmed. It's great when you have something like, remember I talked about those repetitive thoughts? 95% of our thoughts are repetitive. If I find something just kind of on this hamster wheel in my mind, I just cannot get it out, I will go brain dump. I will write down what's in my mind on a piece of paper, whatever it looks like. Even if it's, I don't know what is bothering me, I don't know what to write about, I just don't feel good, or I don't feel the best about myself right now, let your mind go and it will fill the page, if not pages, maybe a journal. The point is to get it out of your mind. And then I like to crinkle it up and throw it in the trash. So it's literally like pulling it out of my mind into the trash, okay? Scripting, that is essentially scripting out my day, how I want it to go. Now, it's very much realistic. It's not like I'm going to win $1 million today. It's very much like this meeting is going to go well. This is going to go well. You know, I'm going to have a good day today because XYZ. I feel good about myself and I feel confident in my choices today. And it's going to be a pretty good day. Affirmations, like I mentioned before in the mirror, if you want to do the I am statements, the affirmations I do are different. They are more towards the scripting side, but the point is whatever feels good to you, to do it. If saying I am enough, or I deserve self-care, or I deserve to feel good, that's what you need to say, then say it. Asking yourself what brings me joy. I'm not talking about happiness, I'm talking about joy. I'm talking, and to me, those are two different things. To me, joy has a sense of peace and contentment to it that is just very fulfilling. You feel fulfilled. You feel just good overall. Your soul feels good, right? Happiness is just, I'm happy. It seems more fleeting to me than joy. Joy seems more solid. So then there's the 5 whys. Now, I mentioned earlier about asking yourself why. The thing is, when you start asking yourself why, your brain will give you an answer. You might not like the answer, but it'll give you an answer. So it could essentially be, if you want to get to the root of an issue that you have and you can't figure out, and you're frustrated maybe with the TV. Why am I frustrated with the TV? Well, it won't turn on, it's lagging, whatever it may be. Well, why is that bothering me? Because it's taking too much time and I actually just sat down, I want to watch my show. Why? Because I've been working all day, been doing all these meetings, all this different stuff I've been doing all day. I just want to relax. Why? Because I deserve to relax. Or maybe it comes down to even more than that. Why? Because I've been working myself, toxic positivity, toxic grind there, right? I've been working myself to the bone and I just want to sit and relax and be left alone to just watch my show. Okay, that tells me there, right, that person thinking that is saying that they have to work themselves, go, 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 and that they just don't have anything left in their tank. And they're getting upset and wasting energy on being upset with the TV. Now there's EFT tapping. That's emotional freedom technique. That's alternative acupressure therapy. You can certainly research that. I do not teach that, though I do show people some basic techniques. I encourage people, that is a great way to process emotions. Use that alternative acupressure therapy to release emotions and feel good, feel better. Same thing with meditation. I don't teach meditation, though I do refer that to people. And there's 16 different types, and some, I think there's actually probably more than that now at this point. Essentially what that does with me with meditation, it's practicing that mindfulness and being aware of my surroundings and incorporating some of those affirmations and basically giving myself some self-compassion, because essentially this is what it's about, is self-compassion. Speaking of that, being present and self-acceptance. When I was starting out, Dr. Kristin Neff's work changed my life. I still use her workbooks today. In fact, if you know her and if I could meet her, that would be fantastic. You would be my best friend. But her work really resonated with me and kind of was the basis, the foundation of when I started to ask people and started to read case studies about self-care and self-compassion and confidence. And they're all skills, using that mind, right? Those are all skills that we have the choice to learn or not. And I'm the type of person that I like to challenge myself to learn new things. And so I know I'm going to have those days where I'm not as confident as I want to be, right? Or I'm thinking, or I used to be. That's terrible to say that, but that's true. We'll say, well, I used to be this way, but now I'm not. It's negative talk like that can really kind of get us into a spiral, which is why we tend to focus on being present on what we're doing and get that self-acceptance and self-compassion to ourselves whenever we do find ourselves kind of slipping up, when we, know better, right? I should have done it this way. Take should out of the vocabulary. It's more as I didn't do it the way that I hoped, but I will do better next time. I will get it the next moment. I will figure it out. I haven't figured it out yet, but I will. And so essentially, when it comes to the mindful self-care, you guys hear about gratitude. I feel like I don't really have to explain that. We all understand the importance of gratitude. I don't tell people to just, again, write that they're grateful for these things that are kind of out there and just very toxic positive at times. Or because people can start to feel like they should be grateful. And if they don't, they start to build shame. So I tell people to just start the basics. Grateful for breathing, grateful for waking up, grateful that my coffee machine worked this morning, or I made myself breakfast, or I remembered to grab that package because I have to take it and drop it off the mail. And to start at baseline and work your way up when it comes to gratitude. Start for the very, very basics of basic human needs and then build from there. And it comes to perspective of how we are seeing ourselves, how we're seeing self-care, how we are, like I kind of mentioned, those common narratives, is shifting our perspective, pebble by pebble, or the little spurs on the barbed wire, putting some distance between those. That intentional mindset. As someone who used to be kind of a retail therapy was very much real. And when I was married, anytime there would be a major fight, I would go to my Amazon wish list and I would buy something under $20 because he wouldn't notice. Excuse me. I realized what I was doing. That instant gratification, right? Of just, oh, here's something here, boom, boost serotonin. All right, awesome. Okay, wait a minute, it's gone again. I have to buy something else. When I start to be intentional with my purchases, intentional with my choices, intentional with how I'm communicating with people, how I'm showing up in different situations, that's when I noticed that things started to honestly flow better in my business, flow better in my work, in my relationships, in every area of my life, because I was intentional. And I took the time because I knew, and I still know, that I'm worth it in taking that time. And once I started doing just a couple slight shifts of how I see self-care as basically consistent acts of self-love and what self-love means to me, it all flowed, and it really didn't become anything of adding. It was just shifting, right? And cultivating that curiosity. We are, like I said, avid learners and exploring. And even if it's just a little hunch, right? A little interest, a little spark of this particular subject, I will go explore it. It might be for a day, it might be for a week, but you deserve to cultivate that curiosity because you don't know where it's going to lead. It could lead to something amazing. It could lead to, you might think nothing, but then 5 years down the road, you're like, oh, I remember I remember researching that a couple weeks ago or a couple years ago for 3 weeks. I think I'm going to get back into it now. The point is that you deserve to know basically how to love yourself, how to self-parent, how to nurture yourself. And that takes time, but we are worth doing the hard things for. We are worth that time. It's the greatest investment. And so, like I was saying earlier, it really is not about finding yourself. Finding implies that you're lost. And, I don't know who I am. I don't know what I like. What is self-care to me? That's not the case. So finding implies lost. To me, you have to move forward in order to go back, and to go back to who you were, back to before society told you to be a certain way or you had to like things a certain way, like sometimes we have to kind of move forward in order to go back. And so I will leave you with this. Be patient with yourself. Self-growth is tender. It's holy ground. There is no greater investment. And I hope you know that who you were before, maybe, like I said, maybe you were into a hobby, you were into something, you think, I can't go back there. Yes, you can. Absolutely, you can. That person's still very much inside of you. Cultivate, explore it, and give yourself some self-compassion, because essentially self-care, while consistent acts of self-love, is awareness, plus that discovery with some confidence and some compassion and courage along the way leads to a more fulfilling life and overall better well-being.
Thank you, Kristin, very much. We do have one question from the audience, and I think it's a particularly important one. We
Sure.
want to know, what is your go-to to get out of autopilot?
Sure. So when I find myself on autopilot, when I feel like I've been doing the same thing over and over again, let's say in the mornings, if I find myself waking up and I am just groggy, where's my allergy medicine? Where's my coffee? Where's my water? And I usually about 3 or 4 days into that, if I find myself kind of just in the mornings, I'm like, okay. So having that self-awareness of like, I don't like the way I'm feeling in the morning. I don't like this. The go-to thing to shift out of it is to ask myself, what do I need right now to feel better? What do I need right now? Is it really that extra cup of coffee, or maybe should I just go for a walk? And I should ask myself, I just say, what do I need right now? And then I ask myself, how can I get it? Because sometimes we're going to say, oh, I need the beach. I need to go away. Our brains are going to come up with these different things, which are funny, right? We're like, okay, yes, of course we want to go to the beach. Of course we want to go on a trip. Of course we want, but then it's like, okay, be realistic, Kristin. What do you really honestly need right now to feel better about yourself? And for me, a lot of times it's just go be away. Put your phone down, go outside, go sit in your hammock chair, and just go be out there. Don't worry, the emails will be waiting for you. No one's in crisis mode. They will survive. You take 5 minutes to yourself. But it's asking myself, what do I need in the moment? And again, being realistic. I will get an answer, and then I will do my best to get that. So even if I have to be like in a meeting, I'm like, okay, well, I'm running late for this meeting, so I can't, but I'm going to dedicate time after this meeting to go for a drive, or I'm going to dedicate time to go outside, or whatever it may be. So how I shift is asking myself, when I feel myself, is pausing and saying, Kristin, what do you need right now to feel better about yourself? And then doing my best to get that.
Thank you. We do have one more question, which I'll bring up in the moment, but folks have told me that the dedication we made for this keynote, a lot of folks weren't in the room yet. And I think it's really important just to make sure people are aware. We dedicate this keynote on self-care to a wonderful member of the Unizin community, John Johnston from the University of Michigan. He had infectious enthusiasm, deep understanding of subject matter expertise, and persuasive influence, and was well loved by the Unizin community. We really valued John's contributions in creating the strategy and the vision behind the UDP and being the lead on My Learning Analytics. And we also have to thank our sponsor for making this possible, and that is Desire to Learn. They've been an incredible sponsor of Unizin's mission and supporting higher ed institutions overall. They grapple with the challenges of digital transformation with the Academy all the time. They help us unlock the potential of digital tools, and they've been partnering with us for some time. D2L is a strong believer, Desire to Learn is a strong believer in choice, and would like to thank Unizin for support and enthusiasm in providing our member institutions with options. And I'm sorry to repeat the commercial for the few of you that may have been in the room the first time we heard it. That was actually the intro. And then, of course, I introduced Kristin, and I thanked everybody behind the scenes. I do want to get to this very next question. This next question is, what is a good way to take a moment and practice self-love or self-care if you're in a situation with other people who are projecting their feelings onto you, but you can't remove yourself from the situation? You can't just walk out. So what would you recommend in that particular case, Kristin?
Sure. So in that case, if you can't leave the room, if you can't leave the phone call, but you can definitely feel this person's energy, like, okay, they're clearly projecting some stuff on me and this isn't about me, is essentially I will take a deep breath in that moment and kind of pause and remind myself, they're taking it out on me right now. They might not even know that they're doing it. Most people don't even know that they're doing it. And be like, and kind of a way to kind of center myself. There is some different breathing techniques. I typically do about 4 seconds in or 4 seconds out. I know they teach Navy SEALs, which is a box breathing technique, which is you hold for 4 seconds, you inhale for 4, exhale, and then hold again. So it depends on how much time you have, but to basically take kind of a deep breath, because at that point, I'm already aware that they're projecting. I already know that clearly there's something else going on. So I take that time to just take a couple deep breaths or even one big one to just reset. I also might kind of plant my feet on the ground and ground myself to the actual floor if I'm sitting or standing. And like, because, you know, sometimes when we're sitting, we cross our legs and so forth, plant my feet on the ground, ground myself and be like, okay, they're taking it out on me. Let them finish whatever they're talking about. Give yourself a breath or a moment to pause and then respond. And then sometimes if I need more time, maybe it's something they're coming at me with several questions and I don't know how to respond and I can feel that energy. I'll say, I would like to just have a moment. Let's go back to your first question. And then get them to kind of break out of their, oh, okay, wait, what was my first question? And then get them to shift out of their kind of rant, so to speak, to get back. Or just say, you know what, just give me a moment and I'll respond to you. Or if it's honestly, if it's really hostile, you can simply just say, you know, I would love to talk to you about this, but let's take a moment to be a little more calm and then let's figure out how we can address this moving forward. But let's bring it back down to a level that we can actually make decisions to move forward. Because if we're both in a heated, you know, like I said, people choose those feelings over fact. When you start to kind of get heated about stuff, your reasoning kind of goes out the door, right? And then all of a sudden you feel charged, like you want to get back at them. So even if it's in a really heated situation, I'll just calmly ask them to just, okay, let's bring it down to baseline. Let's take a breath. Let's go back to that first situation, that first conflict, and then let's come up with a solid solution together. I have seen situations where it's even worse than that, where they're like, no, I'm like, okay, well then I'm going to leave and come back in a few minutes and then we can discuss it. Honestly, I've done that with my children a time or two. But so a quick breath, grounding my feet for that. If it's a little hostile, kind of asking them to kind of, you know, come back to their original thought, breaking their autopilot because they're kind of going on a tangent, right? Or if it gets really where it's like, I've tried all these things, it's still intense. I'm like, okay, you know what? Let's just take a quick 5. Take a quick 5. Let's recharge ourselves because then we can regroup and come back to the actual issue. You know, you get all these concerns, but then we can come back in 5 minutes and find the core issue and come up with solution to that issue. But we can't do that if we're filling the room with hot air of frustration because nothing's going to get solved that way. So those are kind of different ways that I kind of handle it depending on the situation.
Thank you. There looks like there is one more, and I'll ask the first part of this question because I know we only have a few moments left and it will cut us off. So could you unpack the phrase toxic positivity?
Sure. You want me to unpack that? Okay. So, you know, social media is a big part of our lives now. And so we see it all day, especially if we choose to, right? Even some of our news outlets and the different ads. But what someone, especially me in my space, I would follow people on Instagram or I'll be on Facebook looking at family member stuff. And it's basically just smile, just stay positive. And it's like, okay, yes, but that's not realistic. And when you try this whole thing of, I just have to be positive, well, just stay positive, that doesn't work. Because what it's doing is essentially telling your mind that those other feelings don't matter, right? And a lot of times we have to address those feelings. We have to kind of get into that inner work of whatever the issue may be, the stress. When we try to sugarcoat or just be positive, talking about those boulders, it's going to build and then eventually it's going to blow. And then you're going to get short at something that's so minute and tiny. And you're wondering, why did I blow up over that? Right? Because I was trying this just be positive. Same thing with the hustle and grind stuff. It's like you just have to work, and then you get to celebrate. Or some of the toxic stuff that I see too is just for women, just put some makeup on, just get dressed and just, be fine. And for men, it's like, just go to the gym, just go to the gym, or go crack open a beer, go have a glass, that type of thing. And while those things are fine in moderation, they should not be used as coping mechanisms for other issues. Kind of mentioned that retail therapy that I used to do. It was a coping mechanism. So a lot of toxic positivity that we see are those, and I think they're coming from a place of good intentions. They don't realize that they're doing it because I'm just trying to spread the love and light. But when you tell people to just be happy or just smile through it, there are times you do have to kind of grin and bear it, right? Whatever the situation is. But you do need to address the issues underneath. You do need to work on yourself on the inside, because otherwise it's not going to feel good. And I have found this phrase that I use, and I'm very happy to say that there are therapist friends of mine who use this with their clients. So I know that this resonates, is that a thought is a thought and a feeling is a feeling, but none of it matters unless we give it meaning. And we give everything we think meaning when it doesn't deserve meaning. And so when we tell ourselves, I should be happy, I should be this, that's where that toxic positivity comes in. It's like, no, you know what? I'm allowed to be upset. There are situations that being upset is a very normal response. Being sad is a normal response, right? Grieving is a normal response. And everyone's grief is different. Everyone, how they process things are different. And when I see that mainly on social media of people just saying to just grin and bear it, just smile through it, just stay positive, that's not realistic. And it's just telling people that their other feelings don't matter, and they do. Because when you realize and you give them that space, and then you can kind of learn to separate yourself from them, that's when you start to make real progress when it comes to your overall emotions. So you aren't consumed by them and they don't take up your whole day.
Thank you very much for all the advice and all the help. And I hope everyone gets an opportunity to do some self-care today amongst the summit. Thank you so much, Kristin. Thank you, everyone. Have a great summit. I'll see you in the next couple sessions. Thank you.
Thank you for this time, guys. I appreciate it. Have a great day.